Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everyone. And we have a ton to get into on this rainy Saturday morning here at the ETV Community Media Center. The all-star selections were made, not just the starters with the finalists being voted in, which I thought that the fans did a pretty good job on overall. But the reserves were then made by a combination of a fan vote as well as the managers for the teams, where they had to make sure every team had at least one all-star representative and every position group had a reasonable amount of people under the circumstances. And my only gripe with the all-star starters that were selected from the finalists is that Trey Turner was the winner in the National League. Now, I talked about this during the finalists announcement that the Phillies and Orioles fans really showed out at the ballots, getting a lot of their guys into the finalist position, whether they were deserving or not. And Trey Turner, I have to give him his flowers, was one of the best shortstops in the game the last month of the season. He started the year off really slow. He had some injuries. He hasn't played a full first half, but he's been really hot as of late. And Trey Turner got the all-star nod over Mookie Betts, who I know who has been injured. But Mookie Betts was having an MVP caliber season at the shortstop position and they were still good. Absolutely amazing season from Mookie Betts that I think should have been voted as the all-star starter. Now, we know Mookie Betts most likely won't be able to participate in the all-star festivities in the game. But I do think the decision by the fans to vote Trey Turner into the shortstop category muddied the waters a lot for the decision that a lot of people, including myself, are pointing to as the worst decision on the National League side of things. And that is the first baseman from the New York Mets, Pete Alonso, getting selected as the Mets representative over his teammate, Mr. Smiles, shortstop Francisco Lindor, as well as some people saying even Brandon Nimmo, the outfielder, would have been a better decision by MLB and by the players. Now, everyone keeps pointing to the home run derby, which I'll get to in a little bit, and how Pete Alonso said if he was in the all-star game, he would have no problem participating in the home run derby, and that might have been the reason why the thing went this way, because they want a big headliner name in the home run derby. Guys like Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani haven't done it in years, and Pete Alonso is a big draw for that event. However, the combination of Trey Turner winning the fan vote, meaning one less shortstop spot is available in the National League, and Pete Alonso getting the Mets nod means they don't need to add another Met, is why Francisco Lindor ended up missing out yet again. And Francisco Lindor has been criminally held out of the All-Star game. He has not made an All-Star team since 2019, and he has been arguably the best shortstop in the game of baseball from 2019 to present. So it's really frustrating for Francisco Lindor that he couldn't just be the Mets representative when he's having a better season than Pete Alonso. But I digress. Pete Alonso's decision really muddied the waters, because then they had to only take a couple shortstops on the bench, and Mookie Betts, who was deserving of being named the starter, had to get added, as well as the Cincinnati Reds' clear representative had to be Elly De La Cruz as a shortstop third baseman. So that just immediately muddied the waters. Another team that I thought might have had a shortstop-only representative was the Colorado Rockies. Ezequiel Tovar ended up getting snubbed off the roster as well in place of Ryan McMahon, who's having a really nice season, but nothing like out of Ryan McMahon's standards. He's a really solid player. He's having a really solid season. But the Francisco Lindor snub is the combination of the Phillies fans loading the ballot box for Trey Turner and Pete Alonso strong arming himself into being a home run derby participant. And I think that's just super interesting when you look at the way that they form these teams now. I know that there used to be so many snubs every single year, but I do think that the National League, in terms of the reserve hitters, other than Pete Alonso, did a pretty good job. CJ Abrams being the Washington Nationals representative, he's having a breakout campaign. Another shortstop. Again, these teams that only have one guy that's a clear all-star are shortstops. Luis Arraez made it at second base for the Padres. Ellie De La Cruz made it, obviously, for the Reds, as I talked about. Freddie Freeman made it as a reserve for the Dodgers. So did Dodger Magic Teoscar Hernandez. Ryan McMahon, as I mentioned. Jackson Merrill, the rookie outfielder for the San Diego Padres, made it. So all three San Diego Padres starting outfielders are all-stars. You don't see that very often. Helio Ramos from the San Francisco Giants was their all-star selectee. Brian Reynolds, who I was trying to push into the starting lineup for a while there, made it as a reserve, and Will Smith, the catcher behind William Contreras. But the National League pitching side, I don't really have too many problems with. Now, Tyler Glasnow was named a all-star reserve, starting pitcher, whatever you want to call it. And he had a chance to start the game if healthy, but he is not healthy currently. So Tyler Glasnow has been replaced by Cincinnati Reds starting pitcher Hunter Green, who's having a really nice season. When I saw that, I was a little confused, and then I looked up his numbers, and I was not familiar with how good of a season he was having. The only thing I'd really seen from Hunter Green this year was him puking on the mound. But Hunter Green's having a really nice season, deserving of an all-star nod. This is a guy who was a top-end prospect in the major leagues, a really highly anticipated debut, probably the highest anticipated pitching debut in the last couple years before Skeens came up. So Hunter Green is a reserve. Ryan Helsley, who has 31 saves at the break, and might even add to that, is an all-star for the St. Louis Cardinals. Jeff Hoffman, the Phillies closer, made it. Reynaldo Lopez and Shota Imanaga are two pitchers that nobody really saw coming, but have been really phenomenal in the first half. Chris Sales had a nice bounce back and is now an 8-time all-star. Tanner Scott is the Marlins representative. He has been really nice in the back end of that bullpen as their closer. And Matt Strahm of the Phillies makes it as an opener/reliever who's having a really nice season. Robert Suarez, who had that scoreless inning streak with the Padres as their closer, made it. Logan Webb and Zach Wheeler, who are two of the best pitchers in the National League, and the National League starter that was named on the Dan Patrick Show, Paul Skeens, makes the All-Star team as a rookie and is the fourth rookie ever to start the All-Star game, first since Hideo Nomo in 1995. And he does this in great company. Everyone's talking about Paul Skeens getting pulled from his no-hitter after a 6-pitch inning. You got to save this guy's arm, especially if the Pirates right now are in contention for a wild card spot. You got to save his arm. You can't blow him out, especially with Jared Jones, who would have been an all-star, being currently on the injured list. Paul Skeens, in his first season, in his first 11 starts, I should say, 2 starts, multiple starts, with no hits and 10 Ks. The other 3 pitchers to do that in a season, not a first half, in a season: Nolan Ryan for the Angels in his 7th career season, Max Scherzer with the Nationals in his 9th career season, and Justin Verlander with the Astros in his 17th career season. Paul Skeens has done it in his first half in the big leagues. I put him up on the set for good reason. He's one of the biggest stars in Major League Baseball right now, and I said that he should be starting the All-Star game. I'm glad that is the case, and I hope that the Pirates add a little something to that team at the deadline, because when you have Skeens, Jones, and company under contract as very affordable arms, you have that kind of rotation. You got to put the chips in and see what you can do, because you get into October and you throw those kind of guys out there, you have a really good chance to win games and upset people. On the American League side, my biggest issue, if you could see from the thumbnail, was on the pitching side, where Clay Holmes was selected as an all-star. And Clay Holmes not that he's having like the worst season ever. He's been really rough during this Yankees tough stretch the last month and a half. Uh, but he's not like the worst closer in baseball. But he's not having an all-star season either. And I thought, oh, well, maybe Clay Holmes, who's been really good the last couple years, hasn't made an all-star team, and they just want to finally give him the nod for some great success. Clay Holmes is a two-time all-star. He's already made the all-star team a couple times. Now he's a two-time all-star. He had made the all-star team in 2022, excuse me. So this is the second all-star appearance. There were three closers in the American League that did not make the all-star team that were more deserving. Andres Munoz of the Seattle Mariners, who's having a phenomenal year, was just named a reserve because his teammate, Logan Gilbert, who was the Mariners representative, has been taken out. So Andres Munoz, justice is served. But when it comes to the two future Hall of Fame closers, I don't understand why Clay Holmes snubbed them. Clay Holmes has a higher ERA, less saves, and a worse whip than both Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrell, who were both looking for kind of milestone all-star appearances when they're both on playoff teams as well. Kenley Jansen, a four-time all-star, would have been his fifth appearance, which to me is a big deal. If you can be a silver slugger, a gold glover, or an all-star for half a decade, that is meaningful. And Craig Kimbrell is a 9-time all-star. So him getting the nod this year would have meant that he's a 10-time all-star, which puts him into extremely elite category for a reliever on his way to the Hall of Fame as well. So Clay Holmes was by far the worst pick there, and it made a lot of other decisions difficult in the American League. Now, I do think the pitching otherwise was relatively solid. For other relievers that made it, Kirby Yates of the home team Texas Rangers is having a phenomenal year. This is a guy who hasn't made the all-star team since his days in San Diego. Mason Miller, who's been the best reliever in baseball this year for the Oakland A's, is their representative. And Emmanuel Clase, who leads the American League in saves and is also well on his way to a elite borderline Hall of Fame career, makes it for the Guardians, and their amazing bullpen is represented. And the starting pitchers, Tyler Anderson makes his first all-star team. This is really cool for him. The Angels representative, he's been clearly their best pitcher and one of their best players. I think Luis Rengifo would have had a chance to be the representative if he didn't go on the IL. Corbin Burns has been fantastic for the Orioles this year and is a true ace that has made a difference for them. Garrett Crochet is leaps and bounds the best player on the White Sox and was very deserving of the spot. Tanner Houck of my Boston Red Sox made his first all-star team and has been really awesome this season. Seth Lugo, another guy who's been kind of a breakout here in 2024 for the Kansas City Royals, joins his teammate Cole Reagans, who was my Cy Young pick, who's had a really good year, but not quite as good of a year so far as the guy who I think is going to start for the American League. It hasn't been announced yet, Tariq Skubal of the Detroit Tigers, who I thought was going to be the lone representative for the Tigers, but they did right by my guy Riley Green, who made his first all-star appearance as well. The reserve hitters, otherwise, Carlos Correa, who's had a phenomenal 2024 bounce-back campaign. Rafael Devers, who has opted out to rest his shoulder, which I'm completely fine with as a Red Sox fan. The fact that he's been playing as well as he has with his shoulder issue, I'm okay with him taking this event off. And it opened up the door for Jordan Westberg, who a lot of people were pounding the table for as an all-star. So he's going to get his opportunity. David Fry was selected as the backup DH, which I also didn't love that decision. He's having a really nice year, and I think he's a really underrated player on one of the best teams in baseball. But there's some other DHs like Brent Rooker, who I think are having a better overall season from the DH spot. Riley Green made it. Josh Naylor made it, who I thought was going to be the starting first baseman, but just not enough popularity there to beat out Vlad Jr. Isaac Paredes is the Rays nominee, is the guy who's in trade rumors right now and is a really good player that is only 25 years old and does not get talked about as one of these great young players in the game. I really like his game, and I was glad to see he made it there. Salvador Perez is a 9-time All-Star. He's going to be pounding the table to try to make a Hall of Fame case for himself over these last couple of years in his career. Kyle Tucker was replaced by Anthony Santander, who was my number one snub from the American League side. But that has been righted with Kyle Tucker being on the injured list, and Bobby Witt Jr. and Marcus Semien, two of the best middle infielders in the league, no questions real asked there. And with Jose Altuve opting out of the All-Star game, Twins infielder Willie Castro has been named an All-Star, and Marcus Semien, who I was trying to get as the All-Star starter, is now officially in that spot. So really cool stuff there by the American League. But I do think those two big issues stem from the New York selections. I think Pete Alonso and Clay Holmes did not need to be on these all-star teams. And you can see the domino effect that it has, especially in the National League when shortstop is extremely strong. You have guys like CJ Abrams and Ellie De La Cruz, who are the clear all-star representative from their team. Ezekiel Tovar probably was a little more deserving than Ryan McMahon, but he got snubbed just because of the shortstop backup. And because the Mets had a representative, Lindor got the boot as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. If Mookie Betts opts out, I would hope Francisco Lindor would be the next call, but you never know with these all-star injury replacements. Sometimes players, when it's too late in the game, are just like, well, I don't want to go. Just give it to the next young kid that's in line. So it'll be interesting to watch. And this all-star game, I think, is going to be a moment for some of these young players. There's 32 first-time all-stars. Somebody's going to have a breakout welcome to the big leagues performance where maybe their local fan base knows how great of a season they're having, but the national audience starts to pay attention. And that's a great transition for my second topic here, Ceddanne Rafaela. Now, Ceddanne Rafaela, if you are not familiar, is the Red Sox rookie center fielder and shortstop. Yes, that's not an error. He is playing both center field and shortstop for the Boston Red Sox, and he's doing so, I may say, at an elite level at center field and a very good, well above average shortstop. Two of the hardest defensive positions in the sport, right up there with catcher. Right now, Ceddanne Rafaela is one of the most overlooked players in the sport. And I'm not saying he should have been an all-star. But what I am saying is that Ceddanne Rafaela is right up there with anybody in the American League for Rookie of the Year. And he is not being talked about as such. Ceddanne Rafaela right now, he has a 1.2 WAR, which is a little upsetting with how good his defense has been. But 11 home runs is right up there with the rookie ranks in the AL. 79 hits is top 3 in the AL. This is a guy who has 15 doubles, 51 RBIs, 11 stolen bases. He's slashing 248, 275, and 423. It's only an 89 OPS plus. But when you take into account that he's playing shortstop and center field at an above average level, and he's up there in the counting stats of home runs and RBIs and stolen bases, extra base hits. The fact that he is right now so far away in the odds for Rookie of the Year in the American League, it's really making me want to put some money down on that. I think that he had his coming out party in the series against the Yankees this past weekend, where in that amazing game where Yoshida forced extra innings, Ceddanne Rafaela in extra innings immediately hits a home run, which ended up being the game winner. And then in the final game, the grudge match of the series, Ceddanne Rafaela homered again and was very instrumental, had the second most total bases in the entire series by the Red Sox behind Rafael Devers. He's come up in clutch moments. He has insane a level of swag to him. He was literally blowing a bubble while making a tough play at short. In the middle of a play, he's blowing a bubble. He's just smooth. He comes up in the big moments. He's got a good attitude, and he plays amazing highlight-level defense. And I just wanted to give him some credit here on this show where I haven't talked a ton of Red Sox throughout the entire season. They've gotten their moments here and there, especially lately as they've been playing better. But I wanted to give Ceddanne Rafaela some national acknowledgement because I feel like he's finally arrived on the national scene a little bit. People are starting to say, who is this kid? But just a really phenomenal first half from him, a guy who has potential to be 20-20, 30-30 for years to come. A guy who is going to have around 80 to 100 RBIs and play two really important defensive positions for the Red Sox down the stretch while they try to get into the playoffs. So, Sadan, keep up the great work, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for this young kid. Now, the home run derby lineup is set. As I said, Pete Alonso, as part of his promise, was now that he's an all-star, he will be competing in the home run derby. But he is not alone. There are other guys that will be competing against him. And I think that this year's group, I can see kind of why Pete Alonso had as much pull as he did. But in reality, this is a weak overall group. Marcell Ozuna of the Atlanta Braves is competing, which you guys know I'm not a big fan of celebrating him, but he has 26 home runs so far. And, they asked him and he said yes. Jose Ramirez and Bobby Witt Jr. are two guys who are super likable. And if they won the home run derby, it'd be great, but they're not necessarily the guys you'd assume have those home run derby swings that are going to win the whole thing. Teoscar Hernandez was the last person added to the home run derby this year. But I think that it's really important looking at guys like Adolis Garcia, who's a Texas Ranger home run derby participant, because they always have to have a home team guy who competes. And I think that this year's lineup for the home run derby isn't what fans really want, but they're not making it incentive based enough for people like Judge, like Stanton, like Kyle Schwarber, and like Shohei Ohtani to do it every year. I think it is good. There is some parity. I've seen some people suggestions to flip this or to let the leaders in the KBO as well as the Nippon Japanese League, the home run leaders in each of those leagues, come over and compete against the U.S. guys. I think that would be really fun. But overall, the home run derby contestants this year, especially with the new format and scoring, having guys like Alec Bohm and Gunnar Henderson as well. Alec Bohm, I don't know how he's in it with his home runs, but just because everyone keeps thinking that, he's probably going to win the damn thing. Gunnar Henderson is going to be in the home run derby too, is another fun young player that if he won, it would be great. My pick for the 2024 home run derby is Dodger Magic Teoscar Hernandez. I don't want Pete Alonso to win the thing. I want him to make to the Final Four, but I don't want him to win the thing. Adolis Garcia showed last year that he is not built for the home run derby. As great of power as he has, Jose Ramirez and Bobby Witt Jr., like I said, they don't really strike me as home run derby swings. Ramirez has competed before. Marcell Ozuna, I can't pick him. And Alec Bohm, I also cannot pick. Gunnar Henderson's the dark horse. I do think Gunnar Henderson could win the whole thing, but I think just based off swing, I'm going to pick Teoscar Hernandez to win this year, and I think that it's going to be really fun going forward. I see people talking about Pete needs the home run derby and the walk year. I don't agree that he needs the home run derby. I think he needed the all-star appearance, which is why he strong-armed himself into the all-star game by saying, I will do the home run derby if I am an all-star. Because he, no matter what he finishes the season, he could finish the season hitting under the Mendoza line. He could say to his agents, he's hit X amount of home runs in the last 5 years, and he's coming off an all-star campaign. The home run derby doesn't get you money in contracts. It doesn't. It's fun, but that's not what moves the needle in contracts. The all-star appearance, though, does. There's a lot of things in there, especially being a multi-time all-star. And I think that's what the real play was for Pete Alonso's contract, was the fact that he is now coming off an all-star campaign, no matter how he finishes this 2024 season. So it'll be fun. I do think that literally anyone can win this year, but I don't think that there's like an amazing storyline of, yes, this guy has to win the home run derby. He's the obvious choice. But Teoscar Hernandez's swing excites me for the home run derby. I think that his swing is built for this kind of event. He just has to come prepared and swing the laces off the ball. So it'll be fun nonetheless. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we like to throw it back down the third base line to this day in baseball history. And with this being All-Star season, there was a ton of historic All-Star moments on this date, July 13th. But one stood above them all as a towering home run, maybe the most famous home run of the divisional era in All-Star game play, was hit on this day in 1971, where young Reggie Jackson of the Oakland A's hit a ball from Doc Ellis, Pirates pitcher, 520 feet into a light tower on top of Tiger Stadium. Now, this All-Star game had 20 future Hall of Famers playing in it, tons of stars, and there were 6 home runs hit in the game. Those players to homer: Reggie Jackson, Johnny Bench, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, Frank Robinson, and Harmon Killebrew all ended up getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. The American League, with Reggie Jackson's home run, won the game 6-4. Now, this home run is not only iconic because Reggie Jackson broke a light that was very high up at the top of the stadium during the All-Star game festivities off the best of the best, but this was also, like I said, a young Reggie Jackson officially arriving with the big league players. Now, this wasn't his first All-Star appearance. He was an All-Star in 1969. But this was his moment where he showed, I think, the entire league full of stars, the best players, that he was coming. And Mr. October, at that time, had an amazing season in 1969, but his 1970 season was injury-ridden and did not have the same kind of thunder to it. But from 71 on, through the entire decade pretty much of the 70s, he was one of the best players in the sport, and not only helped the Oakland A's dynasty win some championships, but also went over to the Evil Empire, went over to the New York Yankees, became Mr. October, and helped them win a couple World Series championships as well. Reggie Jackson is one of the greatest living ball players, and he doesn't get talked about enough. This is a guy that's 74 career WAR, 2,584 career hits, 563 home runs. He won an MVP, was a 14-time All-Star, 5-time World Series champ, 2 Silver Sluggers, and 2 World Series MVPs. If you haven't seen the Reggie Jackson documentary on Amazon Prime, I would strongly suggest you do it. This is a guy who transcends the sport quite a bit. And the fact that he was able to win in 2 places, the fact that he was as big as he was, he had his own candy bar, he dropped to a knee to hit home runs. He was one of those guys, one of those generational players that will transcend time. There's a lot of players, like some that were mentioned, that hit home runs in that game. Harmon Killebrew, Frank Robinson, who had phenomenal careers. But their popularity hasn't kept up with the times. The newer generations of fans don't really seem to appreciate those guys. But the stories of Reggie Jackson will echo through the years. And I know in my hobby world, his rookie card being 1969, so he doesn't have any like truly vintage cards. It's late 60s through the 80s. I believe he's going to appreciate super well over time because his popularity, his name value, his nickname, having those clutch performances on top of the inner circle milestone clubs that he's a part of. I think Reggie Jackson deserves a lot more credit than he gets. And I know there's so many stories of him being nasty with fans. But this is a guy that drove in 1,700 career runs. This is a guy who stole over 200 bases, hit over 460 doubles in his career, scored over 1,500 runs. On top of the swag, on top of the big moments for the two of the three dynasties from the 70s. Um, Reggie Jackson arrived on this date in 1971. He took a pitch from Doc Ellis on over Tiger Stadium and broke a light fixture. 520 feet projected. Now, there's been a lot of rumors going around this time of year because no one really knows who's going to sell and what prices are going to be. And this is really a seller's market because I think a lot of teams that are somewhat in the race are reluctant to sell. Like I said, Isaac Paredes has just been named as a guy who the Rays are going to explore trading. I don't know why you would trade a 25-year-old all-star third baseman who's looking like he's the real deal to help your lineup. But the Rays are going to Ray. But the real rumors are the fun ones. And you look at the teams, obviously, like the White Sox and the A's and the Rockies, that only have so much to sell. But the Garrett Crochet rumors have been super interesting. They're obviously looking for a big package for him and or Luis Robert, whether they put them together or separate them. And I think the White Sox can really tilt the scales this year at the trade deadline. Them and the Blue Jays, I think, are the two big players that can tilt the scales. If they trade enough pieces to the right teams, it could really tilt the scales of who's going to win the World Series this year or who's going to make the playoffs this year. And I know that everyone's looking at those big names. They're looking at Vlad Jr., Bo Bichette, Yusei Kikuchi, and Chris Bassett, or Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert. But there's going to be a lot of moves in the margins. And that's going to be, I think, where teams really win games. Is not giving up their top prospect for Garrett Crochet or Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but getting the right guy to fill a need from a team that doesn't believe in themselves. So you're going to hear a lot of rumors over the next couple weeks. Some of them are going to have some validity to them, and a lot of them are going to be smoke. But look at your team, your favorite team, objectively. Where they are in the standings, and what holes they have on their roster. What do they not do well? Do they need a right-handed bat to hit against lefties? Are they too right-handed? Do they need a left-handed bat to balance out their lineup? Is their bullpen strong top to bottom? Do they need some holes plugged in there? That's usually a big thing for every team at the deadline is relievers. Do they have enough arms in their rotation to make it through a playoff run? And once you know that, then you can start targeting which teams have expiring contracts, have guys who have underperformed, or have teams that have underperformed. And you can start to match make the realistic trade opportunities that are going to happen. There's going to be some big shocker move, but the majority of these trades are going to make sense in concept in terms of why the team went out and acquired a certain piece. And there's not going to be the biggest names, I think, moving, biggest prospects too. But there are a lot of guys that I think are going to get moved and are going to help playoff runs. And that's what's really exciting. So taking the rumors as you will. Some people live and die with every single report, and some people sit back and just wait to see what happens. I'm more the latter. But I appreciate you guys, everyone that was in the chat today. Mookie, Hugo, Scott, Will, Orlando. Thank you for spending part of your Saturday with me. I appreciate you guys. As always, enjoy this rainy weekend of baseball, and we will look forward to the Texas All-Star festivities very soon.